I don't know who it was. It was
Well, we're going to go ahead and begin. We are on chapter 4 of Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus. So, with no further ado, let's begin with discussion point number 1. Discussion point number 1. Caitlin, would you read that for us?
What does it mean to literally follow a rabbi?
So, what does it mean to literally follow a rabbi? What do you have as your answer?
My answer is it means to mirror him, absorb his essence, that gained essential wisdom more than knowledge. It's a personal transformation.
Absolutely. To follow the rabbi was more than just listening to a rabbi's lecture, but to emulate. I like that. To emulate him. To travel with him. To live with, to eat with. Mike, what do you have?
Yeah, to travel, to live with, to imitate the rabbis, learning not from what the rabbi said, but from what they did.
Very good, very good. To learn not just what the rabbis said, but what the rabbis did. To follow their example, how they followed the Torah. You apply that to your life and you walk that path. Learning not just, like you said, from what they said, but what they did. How their rabbi interacted with everyday life. The task of discipleship was to become like their disciple. Like their rabbi. Discipleship was more than just an apprenticeship, and it was more than just a modern type of classroom. But it was, in many ways, we're going to look at this a little bit later, but in many ways, it was kind of like an assistant, but also a servant. They followed the rabbi around. They helped them. They helped them through their daily lives. They also helped them with the ministry, before them. They emulated how the rabbi ate. They emulated how the rabbi prayed, the prayers that the rabbi prayed, the times of the day the rabbi prayed, those type of things. I mean, almost in detail. There's stories of of students following their rabbi into the bathroom because they wanted. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but following a rabbi because they wanted to know exactly how the rabbi used the bathroom on that type of detail. Now, we're not talking about going into that type of a detail here. So, but you will oftentimes find within rabbinical writings hyperbole like that. It's meant to illustrate a point that disciples were willing to go to the umpteenth extreme to emulate their to emulate their rabbis and everything that they did, to follow the example that their rabbi gave, to ultimately be like the rabbi when they grew up or when they come to full maturity, shall we say. Number two. Terry, would you like to read number 2?
Around the world and for thousands of years, apprenticeship traditions have been largely unchanged.
Very, very good. Apprenticeship traditions were largely unchanged, right? Mike, number 3.
Sometimes a father would apprentice his sons to another craftsman, and the boy would move into his master's home for a number of years.
Very, very good. Absolutely.
Can you repeat that? I was writing. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
You can always read it in the book.
I don't have the book right now. I read it out.
Sometimes a father would apprentice his son to another craftsman, and the boy would move into his master's home for a number of years.
Okay.
Very good. Number 4. Lori, number 4.
What is the name of the female disciple in Acts 9:36? And the answer is Dorcas or Tabitha.
Very, very good. Absolutely.
Can you spell that for me?
Dorcas.
I know a lady named Dorcas. Interesting. It's such an old name.
Yeah. one of those areas that was probably a bit controversial for that time, although the scripture doesn't say a whole lot about it. But Yeshua, obviously, his inner 12 were all men, but outside of that inner 12, he had disciples that followed him around, from both men and women. So there were certainly female disciples that sat at his feet to learn. They imitated him as a disciple would imitate their rabbi.
From chapter 1, it talks about Martha and Mary.
Right. Absolutely.
Are they
absolutely.
chosen, or is it a volunteer thing they just want to do? A disciple, are they chosen to do
It,
that?
it doesn't really say. I mean, it talks about the 12 being chosen specifically, but it doesn't say about the females. We could only speculate there, and to be honest, I don't know for certain. Knowing how Yeshua has uh, his pattern throughout the scriptures, I am guessing that many of the women he probably called them to him and said, "Follow me." In the same way, much in the same way he did to his other disciples, "Come and follow me, be fishers of men." So it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Would you like to have a life like that now, if possible? I know you can't now; it's too spread apart. But
I that was actually a discussion I wanted to get into in a little bit.
okay, never
Was
mind.
no, that's okay. Was what does discipleship? How should discipleship look like today? Because it certainly was different at that time. They lived in a different culture, and a lot of the work was seasonal. So they had to work heavy for seasons. So that left some seasons open for those type of things. Some work wasn't seasonal. It just really depends. Um, Today, it would be very difficult to do because a lot of the students who followed their rabbis around, we find certainly that some of the disciples of Yeshua had left their families. I mean, not permanently, but temporarily left their families to follow him from place to place.
Peter was married.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, that's going to be a certain hardship upon the family to have to go through that. And not everybody who is a disciple is necessarily called to do that type of a thing to that degree. Right?
Sort of an internship.
If we put it in modern terminology, that I could see that association, like an internship for a season, to take time to sit there and follow. I mean,
I think you just answered number 5. Pretty much.
okay, well, let's look at number 5. Mother, can you read it?
What might a disciple do as they accompany their rabbi on his daily rounds? And we just kind of talked about that.
So, what would a rabbi do? And on his daily round, what would the disciple do? How would the disciple follow their rabbi, and what could they expect on a daily basis? Yeah, prayer, sure. Daily prayers.
Going to courts,
Mm-hmm.
helping the poor, burying the dead, redeeming slaves.
Very good. That absolutely, and those. I mean, and there's many more things as well, but certainly all of those. That rabbi may be called to go to court as part of a beit din or as a testimony. Who knows? So it would be going to court to sit at the feet of the rabbi to learn. Even the Sanhedrin had junior Sanhedrin who were sitting within the Sanhedrin to learn about what it means, so that one day they could eventually take upon that position. Helping the poor, they followed their rabbi around to learn what it meant to help the poor and to learn some of the basic rules about giving. The rabbis teach that you should give, of course, but you shouldn't give obviously to the point where you make yourself destitute, and then you become like the one that you're giving to support. So what does that mean for us? How would that look like for us? Well, they followed their rabbi around and they learned some of those things. What it meant to give and to give to such a degree that you don't become destitute yourself.
Well, that brings to I mean, actually, I don't want to diverge too much, but I was reading in scripture that says, "Give to all who ask." And I was thinking, well, you get every Yahoo that comes along, or some lazo comes along, and you're supposed to slip them money. It's like, to me, it's like, is that really helping them? Is that really what we're supposed to do?
Well, and again, we have to, everything has got to be placed within its context because, we can also look at Paul's teachings that, if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat.
That's exactly right.
So,
So how do you know what to do? You just,
You ask God for discernment. Yeah.
Yeah, I passed
that
3 guys
balance?
today that had their hand out, wanting money with their sign.
and it can be
3 different
difficult
people I passed.
when you're, and I don't want to go too far off on this, and it can be difficult to discern who is being lazy, who just doesn't want to work, and who needs support for their habits or what have you, and who is honestly in need. Following a rabbi around in that type of a situation, you would learn to discern as your rabbi learned to discern. Those are the type of things that you would learn by following your rabbi around, to use that type of discernment. One of the things that, if people are looking for food, as an option, it's something that I've done, is, keeping my car, little $5 gift cards to McDonald's or something like that. That way, look, I don't know that person. I want to assume the best of that person, but I also, don't want to be taken advantage of, and I don't want to be supporting somebody's drug habit. If I have $1 in my pocket or something like that, that's one thing. But if I give them a $5 gift card to McDonald's to go grab something for lunch or something like that, there's not a whole lot they can do with that other than go to McDonald's and grab something to eat. And at least I've done something to help feed their bellies, rather than to support any type of habit. Again, I don't know. Some people are legitimate, but there's also a lot of people who aren't. And it can be hard to discern. So
Well,
just use wisdom there.
At Burger King the other day, somebody come up to the car. Mandy had went inside to get something, and he wanted money to buy food. And I said, I won't give you money, but I'll take you in and buy your food. So Mandy, I gave her the money. She took and bought him food. That's a lot of ways too. Plus, I've had them turn me down too. If you want to buy them food, they want the money.
Something that I've learned. This is connected with the idea of worship, and that is that true worship of God comes from being in His presence and being transformed to who He is. When we are regularly in His presence, worshiping Him through prayer, through devotion, through studying His Word, what have you, but when we are in His presence, especially when we're in studying His Holy Torah, and it's being applied to our hearts, I think what you will find is that in those situations, God will give you the wisdom that you need. He will provide you the wisdom that you need to discern properly. When you step out of His presence and when you become weakened by the flesh is weak, and it's harder to make wise decisions. It's harder to hear from God when you step out of those things. That's why I think fasting can be, so valuable, to set aside the flesh for a season, whether it's a day or 2 days or however. Fasting is so important for those type of decisions because we are removing our fleshly desires and we're focusing intently on Him so that we can hear Him clearly and know His voice. I firmly believe that when we spend time in prayer, when we follow our rabbi, he is our great rabbi, and when we follow him, His Spirit will give us the wisdom that we need to deal with situations like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's continue on. What might a disciple do? Obviously, helping the poor, burying the dead. What does it mean, burying the dead?
On the ground.
Well, yeah, but
taking care of the family and the aftermath, the spiritual
yes
aspect of it, the grief, the questions that come up.
What we would call today the Holy Society, right?
Right.
the Holy Society, the Chevra Kadashah, the helping the families deal with their grief. Also preparing the body for burial. I mean, that is an incredible ministry to know that if you've lost a loved one, to know that there are people who care about your loved one, who are ministering to them, their body at that time, rather than some stranger. You know, it's comforting. It's very comforting. When my father passed on, to know that there was people there who were comforting, who were, you know, preparing him for burial. It was a tremendous amount of comfort, rather than to know that, you know, some stranger at the funeral home was doing. And again, I those who are working in the funeral home, I have no beef with them. I think they do a wonderful job. But in Jewish tradition, obviously, we bury our own. You know, we take care of each other from cradle to grave. And when my father passed, obviously I wasn't there in the room when that happened, but I was told that there was, you know, there were so many people that showed up that half the people couldn't do anything. They just had to sit there and watch because they had far more people than what they needed. What an incredible honor to know that, you know, there was more people that showed up, than far more people than they needed for that. And it really does the grieving heart good to know that. So.
Well, I helped prepare Connie Core Camp, and I thought that would be hard, but it wasn't hard at all. I felt honored to get to do that, and I thought, yeah, I couldn't do that, but it wasn't hard at all.
I've been involved with the Holy Society for quite some time.
I know you helped with Dave,
I've only been on one
and that was
where I actually touched the body.
was that Dave?
That was Dave. That was actually my first one. But I've been
You
in
wanna
the
get
room
used
for
to
the
it.
prepario for several, is leading, you know,
Scripture reading.
well, yeah, scripture reading, and also telling, okay, here's what you need to do, here's the next step, that type of thing. In most situations, I needed to speak. So I needed to remain in a state of cleanliness, where I was unclean until that evening because I was in the room. But if I touched the body, it would have been for 7 days. And I needed to be ready to prepare for the memorial service, that type of a thing. So I've always been blessed to have people come and help, and I've been able to just kind of sit back and dictate what happens and things like that.
He's good at that.
Yeah, I know. But it really is an incredible honor, and it's just very meaningful. Redeeming slaves. We are commanded to not let our own to be sold into slavery, but to redeem our own, right? We should not let our own be turned over, but we are to rescue them, to redeem them from slavery, even if that means we bring them to our house and to our home, and we minister to them and help them get back on their feet, and they go on their way. Certainly, there was a way that was done in the first century. They became, in essence, sort of like indentured servants, you know, where they were brought into your house and they served you for a period of time for their redemption until the end of that redemption. Either their period of redemption was over, or the yes, then they were set. Yes, then they were let go, or the year of jubilee. Either one, they were let go. But part of that process of redeeming the slave was that when you brought them into your home, you didn't just bring them into your home and say, okay, you gotta, you will serve in my house for 3 years and then you go free. No, you brought them into your home and you helped them reestablish themselves. You didn't send them out by themselves all alone. You set them up. You set them out, send them out with the resources that they need to begin life anew. And that was part of that redemption process. How would we do that today? How would we apply that today? I mean, Yeshua, that would have been at the heart of Yeshua's teaching and helping minister to those who were in need, a fresh start, right? How many people are in need of a fresh start in our culture, who go through difficult circumstances, who go through drug addictions or what have you, or they come out of jail and they need a fresh start. They need somebody to give them a helping hand so they can get back on their feet and begin to embrace life again.
I think that's my life calling.
Yeah, that's true. Yours is perpetual, though. You need a break sometime.
So it's just, I got about 11 people in my house now. I stay in my bedroom. But that's
Shall we
okay.
say-
I'm not complaining because I don't mind doing it. I don't.
Hey, Jimmy, also, I also have what Terry put down, but I'll also put down to be a humble and caring companion, doing personal acts of service, and to help the teacher in all things.
Absolutely. Like I said, that's right. And that falls, like I said earlier, to be, in essence, like a personal assistant to the rabbi, right? To help the rabbi in his ministry.
Just
and
like you
what
say,
he's doing.
internship. Falls right in
Yeah.
there.
You learn, or apprenticeship, or whatever.
Apprenticeship.
You learned by following your rabbi around, by being with them, learning how they did things, and helping them do that. The authors of the book use Elijah and Elijah quite a bit as an analogy of that type of discipleship relationship, of a discipleship to a teacher, a student to a teacher. Excuse me. How should this look for us today? What does it mean to be a personal assistant to the rabbi, or to be a disciple of a rabbi? One of the things that I have wrestled with is there does, on the surface, there does seem to be a little bit of a conflict here. Because on one hand, a disciple-teacher relationship is such that you called your teacher master or father, some type of name of reverence. I mean, you were their servant in essence. You were like a slave to them, a love slave, what we would call the Hebrew love slave. There was so much reverence, in some ways even more reverence than your natural born father, because as the rabbis teach, your earthly father brings you into this world, but your spiritual father brings you into the world to come. And we certainly see that with Yeshua. And we're called to raise up disciples. But what does it mean for us to raise up disciples? Clearly, Paul had disciples. Clearly, Paul had those who followed him. Timothy, Luke, and we can look at others as well, who followed him, who were disciples who sat at his feet to learn how he did things, to learn how he studied, to learn his interpretation of Scripture, to learn how he interacted with the Gentile community, that type of a thing. They were his students in essence, and they followed him around as like his assistants, very much a student-teacher relationship. And yet Yeshua clearly says, don't let any man call you rabbi or father, right? So how do we reconcile that? Because Yeshua seems to be teaching us there, you don't raise up disciples for yourself, but for me. It's not about you. You bring people to my feet. And I really do think it's a matter of a humble spirit. It's a matter of whether or not there's self-exaltation in that.
Exactly. I was going to say, it also has to do with whoever the master or teacher is in this relationship. It's important for them to be teaching that it's not about, we don't do these things for us. We do it so that the Father is seen. We show the
Right.
Father's heart in everything, from going to court to burying the dead to redeeming the slaves. And it's all about showing God and emulating God, essentially, to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely.
And that is a concept that's lost in our culture today.
Absolutely. We, and let me clarify, when Yeshua talks about do not let any man call you rabbi, and do not let any man call you father, we got to be careful about taking things hyper literally here. How many of you heard the argument, well, we shouldn't use the title rabbi? The title rabbi shouldn't be used because here clearly Yeshua says you shouldn't. Well, then if that's the case, you shouldn't be calling your father father.
So
Or
that's where I disagree, because the Bible says honor your mother and father. So,
correct.
but I'm not gonna call you father like I would, you know, when I was a kid in the Catholic Church. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. And I believe what Yeshua here is teaching is you are not to raise up disciples for the purpose of sitting at your feet, but you are to raise up disciples for the purpose of sitting at my feet. You are not to be exalted like the other rabbis are. The title rabbi today was not the same as it was used back then. Most likely the title, because remember we're talking about Greek, we have the Greek translation, but we can speculate what the Hebrew that was used here. And it based upon the Greek text, my belief is that the Hebrew that is used is not rabbi but rabboni, which is more than just our great teacher or our master, but the exalted presence. There were some who referred to their rabbis as rabboni or father, with that type of reverence. And Yeshua is simply saying that type of reverence and honor is reserved for the Messiah, not for you. You are to bring people to my feet, not to your own feet. Okay. Will there be people that sit at my feet and learn? Sure. But as Paul rightfully says in 1 Corinthians 11:1, follow me only as I follow the Messiah. That my purpose is to lead you to him. I only follow me as I follow him because he is the goal, not me. I am fallible, I am human, I will fail. And if you put your trust in me, you're going to be disappointed. And the truth is that and this has been one of my contentions with the Jewish community, is that I understand where they're coming from, but the exaltation of some of the rabbis are so overdone sometimes in a desire to lift up the rabbis as these great, righteous, perfectly righteous and holy men that could never do any wrong, that pooped gold. Forgive me for my blindness, but it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic, and it focuses a lot on some of the external things. This rabbi was so meticulous on keeping the Sabbath. This rabbi was so meticulous on keeping the Sabbath that that he refused to scrape the mud off of his shoes when he walked to synagogue on the Sabbath. They're in fear of plowing, or he refused to spit on the ground in fear of plowing and harvesting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
It happens.
yes. Look, my purpose here is not to condemn the rabbis, because I don't. I think the rabbis have a lot to teach us. But the one issue that I do have sometimes is the exaltation of the rabbis by their students, to the degree that it's virtually impossible for any divinely born, any non-divinely born person to live up to. Yeshua is the only one who is not born of a woman, who is born of the Spirit of God, who is the Son of God made flesh. And he is the only one that should ever be emulated and exalted to that level. And I think that's essentially what Yeshua is teaching us, is that it is him and him alone who is exalted to that level. Does that make sense?
I mean, you make it makes a lot more sense, actually.
Okay. Good. So follow me only as I follow the rabbi. Following your rabbi was more than just about imitation, but it was about inner transformation. Okay? They desired to follow the rabbi so closely so that they would one day be like him. I will follow my rabbi so closely on his heels that I will one day be like him. Remember the storm on Galilee. There was a storm on the Sea of Galilee when the disciples became afraid. On that stormy night, Yeshua walked on water towards them. In spite of his personal fears, Peter longed to be so much like his rabbi, walking on water, that he got out of the boat and began to walk towards his rabbi. Only when he began to doubt himself did he begin to sink. When he began to doubt himself. What I mean by doubting himself, and I don't mean that he put his trust in himself, that he somehow had the power to do it. But when he began to doubt his own trust in his master, he began to doubt his own trust in the Messiah, he began to sink. But he desired to follow the master to that degree that he would hop out of the boat and begin to walk to him just like his master walked. If my master can do it, I want to be like him. And I want to follow him. That should be our heart's desire, is to be ready to get out of the boat and say, if you're walking across this water, I'm going to follow after you. I'm going to tread water with you. Even if I'm knee deep, I'm going to keep going, you know. Number 6. Mike, can you read number 6?
In Luke 9:62, what prophet was Yeshua referring to when talking about putting his hand to the plow and looking back?
What prophet? Very good. Prophet Elijah, right?
Precious daughter, my firstborn, named Elisha.
Number 7. Barbara, can you read number 7 for us?
Discussion point, in Mishnah Avat 6:4, how did the rabbis describe their lives?
So, according to Pirkei Avot 6:4, how did the rabbis describe their lives? What do you got?
This is the path of Torah. A morsel with salt shall you eat, and you shall drink water by measure, and sleep upon the ground, and live a life of painfulness. And in Torah shall you labor. If you do this, happy shall you be, and it shall be well with you. So basically, it was they would do almost the bare minimum to stay alive so that they could focus on understanding Torah, learning Torah, and not just learning the words, but learning the heart of what God was telling us.
Absolutely. In many ways, they forsook material wealth, material well-being, and they entered a life of hardship, or what I think maybe a better word would be a life of discipline, to some degree. And it was more than just discipline, but they entered a life of discipline through hardship, through struggles, because those hardships and those struggles would ultimately bring great reward, would bring passion, would bring joy and fulfillment in their lives.
Humility.
Humility, yes, absolutely.
Is that where the pain comes in because you don't have all the
I know the word you're looking for. Yeah. The comfort of the
right,
world.
yeah, just the comforts.
If again, I'm only speaking here an outsider knowledge, but if an EMT found came up to a bad accident, somebody was in a terrible wreck, and they were in a mess. If that person was in a lot of pain, okay, that pain was a sign that they were still alive and they were still struggling. If that person was in a mess and they weren't feeling any pain, that's usually a sign that they're, that wasn't so good. So pain for them was a good thing because it reminds them that this person is still alive and fighting. And so it is for us spiritually. Pain, it's not that we intentionally go out and try to fight pain. That's not it at all. But we find pain and hardship and difficulties in our lives, and God allows those things to happen because He is building us and He's strengthening us to make us stronger, like clay in the potter's hands. He's making us stronger. when you put clay in the potter's hands, that clay has to be beaten up a little bit. It has to be, molded and shaped and pounded to get to the place where it's firm and it's going to stand. That's not an easy thing, and for us, it's not an easy thing to go through those difficulties. Sometimes we shake our head and go, "Why? I don't understand." I was talking about this past Shabbat. Why does God allow some of those things to happen, such hardships to happen sometimes? And ultimately, the answer is, I don't know. I don't know exactly why, but I do know this, that He uses those to discipline, those disciplines, those hardships, to mold us and shape us, to make us stronger. What does not destroy you will make you stronger, right?
Now,
You'll be surprised
Barb-
what you can live through.
Barb made a good point, because now, to me, material comforts to me are a distraction. Okay,
Mhm.
so in other words, if um, as far as you really have to discipline yourself in today's modern age to get off the computer, shut off the TV, and to be studying, because like I said, there are so many distractions, you know.
Absolutely. Like that one. Yes, you're absolutely right. In our modern world, full of materialism and wealth and just the advancement of technology that it moves so fast and so quick, and you have to be up to date on the latest apps that are out there to communicate with people, and especially if you're in a leadership position, because you got to be able to communicate with people. And the reality is that's how people communicate now, especially the younger generation. The younger generation doesn't. They don't have cell phones so they can call you. They have cell phones so they can text you
Yeah.
or send you a Facebook message or post something on Twitter or Instagram or the list goes on.
Snapchat. That's a new thing.
Snapchat, yeah.
I was informed.
What is Snapchat?
It's like chatting with pictures. You take a picture and that's how you chat.
Yep.
So how's that different from Instagram?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's just a new thing.
That sounds like something Sarah would do. She's got I don't know how many pictures on Facebook.
But you're right, that can become a distraction.
And
That's why it's important to discipline yourself to be able to put those things down. Be able to put those things down and to be able to spend time with your family. How many of us have, again, I'm going off on this rabbit trail, but we're used to it.
It's not so much. It's balance between family, okay, the word.
Yes.
So and then all these other modern
Right.
distractions, and
And there's nothing inherently wrong in them other
No.
than they can ultimately take the place of God in your life and
Yeah.
become a
that's
type
the
of
point,
idol
yes.
to some degree.
Yeah. If you start living your life around things of the world, it takes away your time and energy and focus from God and living your
Right.
life around
Prayer.
God.
Yeah.
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 Devotions and all that. Yes.
How many of you went into you walk into a restaurant, you see a group of friends eating together, and they're all on their phones. Nobody's talking to any to them. They're just
Yeah, they're
No.
texting each other at the same table.
Yeah.
Put down the phone and open your mouth.
Yeah.
For me, I always carry a book with me. I always have a book to read. And whenever we go out to eat, Lori's, nope, don't bring your book in. Nope, leave it. Nope, not bringing it in. She'll take it from me and throw it back in the car.
Yep.
Nope, you're spending time with me. You're not spending time with that book. Leave it here. I'm only going to read it when you go to the bathroom. No,
You take it to the bathroom? The
no,
public
when she
bathroom?
goes to the bathroom.
Oh,
Oh, I go say you take it in the public bathroom.
No.
Punctuation, clarification.
When Lori has to go to the bathroom or something, I have something to keep me preoccupied.
You gone that long, Lori? No?
Are you ADD?
I am big time.
What was your question?
He's ADD.
Yep, I've scored very high on the ADD
If that's
charts.
what it is, I gotta answer my pants too. It's like I can't stand wasting time. It just bugs me.
I love to waste time.
I got ODD, OCD. Who knows how many
You're
other
ODD on it.
ODD.
Good
Wow, ODD. I am a little odd. Yeah.
one, Lori.
ADD.
Yay, number 8.
Hey, move right along. That's why I need people like Jonathan to say, "Yeah, get back on track. Keep on moving." Number 8. Number 8. Jonathan, would you read that?
Okay, but I wasn't here. You got answers?
Yes.
Modern
Cheat.
Christians have sometimes been confused about the discipleship is equating it with discipline.
Very good. And we were just talking about that. The discipline is important. The discipline does play an important role in discipleship, but discipleship is much deeper and it's than discipline.
Especially since, again, today's culture looks on discipline as something harsh
Right.
and not a learned habit.
It's a discipline is negative. It's something that you do when you get into trouble,
Yeah.
right? When you get into trouble, you get discipline. Well, discipline, even when you're not in trouble, teaches us, how to do. Discipline teaches us how to be people of God.
Yeah.
How
Not
to
to get in trouble.
how not to get in trouble. There you go. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Number 9, Terry.
It has been said, just as one candle lights another only if it is brought close, so a rabbi only teaches well when he is close to his Talmudim.
Good.
Know your audience. Understand who you're talking to, who wants to learn from you, and how to properly relay that information.
Identify their strengths and weaknesses and work with those.
Absolutely. We were talking about discipleship. I think I've mentioned this before, but one of the things that I am trying to put some lesson plans together for is this idea of more than just a classroom type discipleship, but when a person comes to faith in Yeshua, when they become a new believer in Yeshua, they need to know what it means to be a disciple of Yeshua. There are some basic things that they need to grow in maturity on. And they can read them in books, but who in the world knows what kind of information they're going to find in books today? That was never the way it was intended. And in fact, that's why, in many ways, the rabbis were very hesitant about writing down their oral teachings until Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, because of the diaspora, because the Jewish people were beginning to be spread, only then did he begin the process of compiling the Talmud, what would become the Mishnah. One-on-one type of relationships, type of mentorships, discipleships is so valuable. And that's one of the things, especially with new believers, that before they enter into an immersion into Yeshua, because that immersion in Yeshua, I believe, is more than just a statement that I believe Yeshua is the Messiah, but it is a statement of discipleship. I am his. I belong to him. I want to follow him. I want to be his disciple. And you need to know what you're getting into, right? You need to know. Yeshua himself teaches us to count the cost. We know that the rabbis teach us that following a rabbi is difficult. How many here have had a hard time following Yeshua? And the reason I say that is not because I have any regrets, God forbid. No, but because following his teachings is hard. It requires discipline from us. It requires dedication. It requires us constantly looking at ourselves and saying, okay, what do you need me to work on now? Or what is your spirit going to work through me on now? Show me those things that I need to do better. That's not an easy process.
Sometimes it can get frustrating because you always feel like you're falling short.
Yes, absolutely. You feel like you're falling short, and you feel like man, here I go again.
Oh, it's something funny.
Here I go again. I have fallen again. You know, and um, knowing that that you're probably going to fall again today. You know, it.
It just it makes a big difference if you can discern between condemnation, which comes from the enemy, and conviction, which comes from God.
That's true. That's a good point. Absolutely. And there is conviction of him picking us up and saying, "Okay, I'll try again. Keep going.
Oh yeah,
Keep going."
absolutely. You did that with me last week, last Shabbat. I
Oh.
left the house with a big spiritual battle, and then you call me up front to read the English
Oh.
during the Amidah, and there was one part where I felt God smack me upside the head, going, "Did you get it this time?" and I thought, "Oh man!" And I can't wince because people are staring at me. But
I understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit can just take one or two words and get us back in line. Get us back in line with God is what it is, and God's
Absolutely.
heart.
A lot of times the church does not understand why the Hebrew community goes to the Torah cycle over and over and over and over again, you know, and but I have found through reading scripture and through reading the Parsha that I can read something 4 times and maybe on the 5th time a word jumps out at me and whoa, you know, and people don't understand that.
And that's a lifetime. It's a lifetime. Every time you read it, there'll be something else that comes out at you, and you go, "Oh, I never saw that before."
Well, I feel that I wasn't ready to have it revealed to me at that time. Okay.
You know, there's a lot of things I feel like I don't really want to know that right now, but he disagrees. So,
You know, having Brian there with me, he talks to me periodically about he loves coming to synagogue and wants to learn, but he really needs discipleship too. And where is he going to get it from? Because working all the time. I mean, him and Andrea's new in this, and they ask me questions, and they're both so excited, but they need.
why do you think I told you when I talked to you earlier? Remember our conversation? That has to do with our conversation. When a person undergoes a mikvah into Yeshua, when they become a follower of Yeshua, a disciple of Yeshua, they need to know what they're getting into. They need to know to count the costs. It's worth it, to be sure. The rewards are out of this world, literally. But it is not easy. It is not easy. In fact, it is pretty stinking hard sometimes.
You know, he's trying really hard, and
Well,
I don't want to see him go backwards.
I
I
know.
just wish he had somebody around him all the time to lift him up.
And that's one of the
and I'm
difficulties
not
in
a
our
person
culture.
that can do that.
In our culture, it can be difficult because we're so spread out. I mean, we can go on and on about that, but we try to lead by example. But we also need that one-on-one time, that mentorship time. That's one thing I've been trying for a while, is trying to figure out what a mentorship program would ultimately look like. I'm not sure if you really need a formalized program for it. You just need to do it. You just need to sit down with the person and
Match them up.
Yeah, exactly. Have that relationship there. I want to know that when people undergo mikvah into Yeshua, they know what they're doing. That they enter into the waters of mikvah. They know what it symbolizes. They know what it means to be a disciple of Yeshua, and they've dedicated their heart for that.
Yeah, well,
and that takes a little bit of time to prepare people for that. It's not just a matter of saying, okay. In most cases in Scripture, we don't find where the person just says, "Okay, yeah, I believe. Okay, let's go out and there you go. Let's dunk you." You know, we do find that in the case of Stephen and the Ethiopian, but there was probably other circumstances going along there as well. In most cases, I think we can assume, based upon really early Christian writings, that discipleship process before the person entered into a mikveh took a while to get there. There was training. There was let's sit down and let's walk you through this. Let's teach you about what this is going to be. 6 months, a year or so to sit down on a regular basis and to teach them about what it means to be a disciple of Yeshua.
Well, he said he feels so much love in his synagogue that he just almost idolizes you and Mike.
Well,
I mean, he just puts out. I mean, he just thinks so much of you guys. He just almost idolizes you. Puts you on a
it's
pedestal, I
it's one
think.
thing to have honor and respect, and I think it's
Mhm.
great. This ties into what we were talking about earlier.
And he likes you too, Jonathan.
Okay.
But not quite that. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
This ties in what I was talking about earlier. It's not about sitting at my feet. It's about sitting at Yeshua's feet, because we've all probably seen circumstances. I've seen circumstances up close and personal where a student becomes attached to their teacher or to their rabbi, and really kind of assumes the rabbi is above everything. And really, the rabbi kind of brings that person to their feet and sat at their feet. And when that person realizes that the rabbi is fallible, that they're human, and that they make mistakes, and when there was hurt there, then that person was not only chased away, or persons were not only chased away from that rabbi, but ultimately from God, because that rabbi represented God to them. And when that rabbi failed, God failed. That's why it's important that, yes, people can show honor and respect, and, but my responsibility is to bring them to the feet of Yeshua, because
Yes, yes.
Yeah. He's
I
just
don't
new at
want
this.
to
He
fail them.
just-
Yes.
and I will.
Hand in hand, bringing them to exactly to the feet of Yeshua. Yes.
That's my responsibility, is to take them, walk them to his feet to minister. Number 10. Lord, can you read number 10?
What act was a disciple not required to perform, since only a slave did this? Untying your rabbi's sandals.
Untying your rabbi's sandals. Only a slave did this. And yet, remember John's words that he saw when he was speaking about Yeshua, when some of his disciples began to ask him. They said, "Who are you? Are you Elijah the prophet? Are you the Messiah, the coming one?" And this is my loose paraphrase, but there is coming one who is much mightier than me, and whose latches of whom sandals I am not worthy to loosen. He was saying, I'm not even worthy to be a slave. A thing that is even beneath a student to his master. I'm not even worthy of being his student. That is, wow. that was saying something. That was pretty powerful. Barbara, can you read number 11?
What did Paul call Timothy when he sent him to Corinth? Son, didn't he?
My son.
The man of.
Yeah. That was that teacher-student relationship, right? Mike, number 12.
Yeshua knew too well the human propensity for self-exaltation, and thus that is, isn't that why he sent them out two by two?
Right.
Instead of sending them out individually.
Sure. I'm sure that played a big part in it. Absolutely.
Why? Elaborate. Why
I'll
is
let Mike
he gonna-
elaborate.
And also to me, and so I don't know.
Well, I think one of the reasons he sent them out in groups of two is because two could act as a witness. Less than two could not act as a witness. Two could act as a witness on his behalf and ultimately upon God's behalf. But there was also sending them out two by two, allowed for accountability between the two,
Yes.
and not
They-
pride that you know that you were doing this.
Yeah, they kept each other humble,
And
making
then,
sure
what-
that each other's focus was where it was supposed to be.
Right, absolutely.
the Hebrew people already knew, also bringing up the witnesses too, that if one person came in and said this, then and there was not a second witness to validate it, then wasn't it just kind of thrown by the wayside? I mean,
If there wasn't two witnesses,
Right.
there wasn't two witnesses. Yes, it could not be valid in a court of law.
Mhm.
And as I spoke a couple of weeks ago, in order, it can't.
But I
Even
mean,
in
wasn't
the
it that way in their everyday life instead of just in court of law? I mean, yeah, that had to be that way in a court of law. But
yes.
I mean, as far as their everyday life.
Well, and like, let me give you an example of what I was talking about. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about gossip and slander. That is a rule that we need to keep in mind when it comes to gossip and slander. If you have heard something, if you have heard something and you pass it on, you are disobeying Torah if you are passing it on without the confirmation of at least two witnesses, and you are passing it on to the wrong people. If there's been two witnesses to confirm it, it needs to be brought before the elders of the congregation, not to another individual. But that's only the case if there was witnesses. If there was two eyewitnesses. If there's not two eyewitnesses, it has to be dismissed. Some of those issues. I mean, tragically, Darlene brought up a great point. What do you do in a situation of abuse or a sexual violation or anything along that line where there's not two witnesses? The problem is that people know that, and people may take advantage. You have to keep that in mind. That people may take advantage of that. The Torah is set in place not to exonerate the guilty, but to make sure that the innocent are condemned. That's why it sets those standards.
In that situation, though, I mean, you'd have an oral witness, but wouldn't you also have a witness of evidence such as bruises or
You
something
could,
like-
yes, and that's why outside of the court of law, I'm not outside of the court of law. Outside of that person's eyewitness, you may have eyewitnesses to bruises and to other things. So we have access to technology, for example, in the case of rape,
like I said,
that you can determine if there was some type of rape going on there, some type of sexual assault.
in an abuse case, so wouldn't the bruise act as a second witness, though?
I'd have to consult the Talmud on that. I'm not 100% sure how that would work. I honestly don't know. That's a good question, though. It's a good question. I honestly don't know. I know that we find cases tragically where the guilty end up going free because the innocent need to be protected. Like I said, the Torah doesn't set out to release the guilty, but to protect the innocent. Sometimes that means, unfortunately, the guilty go free. We do it in America without without proper evidence. The innocent, you are assumed innocent until proven guilty. That it has to be more than just word of mouth, because there are people who could just as easily take advantage of that as well, unfortunately. So, nonetheless, let's go back to the human propensity for self-exaltation. One of the things that I still fight with this sometimes, because when people come up and say, "Man, I loved your sermon. Man, I love what you did today. Man, you're the greatest," or or what have you. On one hand, I'm human. I need to hear that. I need to hear encouragement. I need to be able to get lifted up and encouraged and say, "Keep on going." And the Lord knows when I need to hear that encouragement. On the other hand, I've got to keep a close eye on that self-exaltation and remember where to point where to point proper credit, and say, you know what, All I'm doing is I'm just trying to do what he's told me to do. He's the one who has guided me. He is the one who has put me under the right leaders. He's the one who has given me the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to teach and the gifting to teach and or what have you. It's not about me. I know without him I'd be a mess. I'd be sitting here stumbling for an hour. You know, sometimes I still sit here and stumble for an hour when myself gets in the way instead of God. But nonetheless, I know where the glory belongs, and I know where it should go. And so on one hand, we all need that encouragement. We all need that, that pick me up sometimes. Because if you don't hear it, boy, it can weigh you down. But on the other hand, you have to keep in mind where it comes from. You have to remember where to direct it, and say, "Thank you. I appreciate your comment. It really does mean a lot to me." But I give all credit to God for all that He has done and all that He continues to do.
I struggle as an egomaniac.
Oh, I know.
You struggle with an egomaniac?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. If I do a job, I need to hear that did a good job at it. Because then I start thinking, oh, did I not do it right? Did I not do enough? And
Well, that sounds
so-
like just the opposite of an egomaniac. It sounds like
Oh, no.
someone who needs encouragement.
No. I need to hear from somebody, whether it's the customer or from my partner, in our business, that that hey, I got a call from the customer, and your customers love you, and they love how you and I need that.
Sure.
It's
It's human. We all do. We all need that encouragement. I need it as well. I'm not going to deny that. I need it as well. But I also know by interacting with people, even within our own congregation, I know that there are just some people you have to come alongside of and give a pat on the back. Because if you don't, they will get discouraged, they will get bummed out, and they will begin to create stirs. So you have to
Create stirs.
pat them on. I'm trying to be nice.
As in trouble?
Unintentionally.
But
You
that's
have to.
the end result, yeah.
Yes. You have to come along, you have to pat them on the back, you have to give them a little shoulder rub and say, you know what, keep on going, you can do this, rah, rah, rah,
Actually, I want to tell you a little story, if I may.
Oh, sure, why not?
Satan was asked which of his servants he wanted to get rid of, and he said, anyone but the servant of discouragement, because he's so effective. I mean, that's absolutely right on.
I know it is.
We're swimming upstream. It's hard. People think you're freaks.
And you're absolutely right. I'm going to be bluntly honest. I mean, people who know me, who have been with me for a while, know that I struggle with discouragement sometimes. I struggle with discouragement, and you come here. I come here on Shabbat morning sometimes, and you look around, you go, "There's nobody here yet," and people are just running late, and you go, "I have to spend a few moments in prayer to say, Lord, give me the strength that I need." Because people are going to follow my lead. And if I come out there all bummed and discouraged, people are going to follow that. But if I come out, I need that a little extra measure of joy right now. And if I come out there with a little bit of energy, people are going to follow that too.
But yeah, I can totally understand. You go out there for whether it's because of the weather or there's a bug going around, and you show up and there's 5 people there, and golly, and
Yeah.
I studied and I did prepared. 5 people,
I know some great men and women who were wonderful spiritual leaders in Seattle. I honestly don't know how they do it. With all the rain and lack of sunshine. And,
I survived.
well, I know you survived, but you're here though. There's a reason you're here. You moved where the sun was. There's a reason. There's a reason Jonathan is here and not back at home.
We left sunny
Where it
Florida
rains
to
every
come
day.
here. Didn't we? We left sunny Florida to come here. Lori left sunny California.
That's true. But I struggle with discouragement enough. To have to wake up every day to rain, that would be a drag. But nonetheless, anyways, actually, that's not entirely true because a lot of people really feel that way. I actually enjoy it when it's cool and rainy outside. To
It's
me, it's like,
refreshing.
this.
Oh, yeah, once in a blue
You know it's gonna
green,
be
it's
better
not
day.
brown. It's green up there, not brown.
That's true.
See?
That is true. I do, and every once in a while, yeah, I would enjoy it more often here. I really would. I would enjoy it more often here. You just don't get that enough. I would prefer that than 90-degree weather. You know, the sun beating down on you. I prefer it 60 and rainy.
Oh, I'm a
Caitlin probably would too. You like colder weather, don't you?
Actually, over the last few years, I've become a woman of extremes. I love it when it's 55 or below, or 89 and above. It's that in between range that I get hot, sticky, muggy, cranky, and. But I love the extreme hot and the extreme cold.
See, I'm a
I
72
can't
degree
figure
guy.
that out.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
were
sounds good to
What
me.
were you like? Like, what was it the week before last week when there was like a high of 2 below? You're like
Oh.
dancing out in the street. Yeah! Woohoo!
Well, I had to dance in the street because my car refused to run. It was so
Yes, I
cold.
gotta walk to work in this.
It's only 5 miles. That's a good stretch of the legs.
Okay, nonetheless, let's.
Moving on, we're almost there.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, number 13. Jonathan,
Can I answer it?
yes, go ahead.
Let's see if I come with the right answer.
But didn't you just copy that?
Blabbermouth. Make sure you.
She was copying my answers. Let me see if I come up with the right
See if
one.
she comes up with the right ones. See if we all agree. Yeshua is the only one to whom all power, is that right?
Nope, that's wrong.
Can safely be given.
Nope, got them both wrong. Sorry.
But you just copied it.
I spelled it back.
Congratulations, you copied it correctly.
And without tracing paper,
I
too.
get to.
All right, we got one more discussion point.
Well, so what's the answer for 13?
Power and safely. Yeshua is the only one to whom all power can safely be given.
Because we messed it up.
Boy, wouldn't we ever? Even righteous King David messed up
Oh,
things
yeah.
sometimes.
Oh,
Boy,
Sorry.
David, Solomon, we had all the wisdom, he still messed things up.
Man, we would. I still mess up things. Heck,
Oh no, not
he is
you.
the only one who can truly be given all authority and know that it is truly righteous authority, and that it will be done for all good.
I just throw something out.
Oh, sure, why not?
I think that, well, you know how I feel about your teaching, just for the tape, I think it's wonderful. But I think
Take
it's
that
really great that there's, this haha. Because it's like, we're not these perfect people, just, with halos and all this. It's like we're regular people. It can draw people in that are listening to this. It's like, oh.
They're human, huh?
We have to
Well,
be honest
yeah.
with who we are. We have to be honest with ourselves. That the first rule of repentance, right, is to be honest with who you are. Because if I can't be honest with who I am and my sins and my mistakes and my unrighteousness, how am I ever going to repent of it if I don't know that it exists?
Well, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just being people.
Oh,
It's
sure,
like we
and
can
that's
have
what
a
I
few
mean.
laughs.
We have to be real. We have to being real. Repentance starts with being honest. And one thing that I try to do is I try to be real and honest with people. I don't hold a whole lot of things back, and I try to surround myself with leadership that is open and honest. It doesn't mean we're going to air all of our laundry out, but we're not going to pretend to be something we're not. We're not going to pretend to be self-pious and, oh, you need to lift me up as this pious rabbi. And people call me by my first name. You know what? I don't care. I don't. People, some people choose to call me Reb. I prefer not to use the term rabbi because of its exalted status, not because necessarily what Yeshua taught, but because it requires a formal shminka that is given through the Jewish community. You know what I mean? And the level of study that goes into that's pretty heavy duty. The UMJC offers shminka, but they give shminka to those who are halakhically Jewish, and only after a pretty lengthy study program. That's not my goal. It's not my purpose here. Is to be called rabbi or to be, to receive shminka as rabbi. It is to teach and try to lead this community as best as I can. And I just think it requires us as leaders to just be honest and to be real people who like football, who can get out in the mud if you need to get out in the mud a little bit, and who it's okay if you don't like football.
I think the best.
It's always a positive.
I think the best thing was when you came dressed as a what do you call those with the dreads?
Oh, the Rasta guy.
Oh, that was hilarious.
That was
just as a Rasta was.
well. A lot of people. You can choose to edit this if you want, but no. It was on Purim. It was about 4 years or so, 4 years, something like that. And I had had the long dreadlocks, the Rasta cap, the long Rasta gown. I forget what it was. And of course, with the beard, it just really stuck out. And then I took a roll of paper, rolled it up. About that long, and I had it sitting in my belt.
And it's not so exaggerated. Mike and I went to Jamaica, and they were sitting and smoking these ginormous spliffs, reading the Bible. Like, really?
Of course, there was nothing then. It was just pure paper.
Oh, sure.
But
That's just for legality,
hey,
right?
it was Purim. We had to go. I was going all out, so I figured,
It's interesting you brought up a athletic, as an analogy, because it seems like, yeah, you always get banged up a lot.
I do.
Yeah, ask Janet.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Or anyone else with basic first aid knowledge. Sorry.
That
Keep
is
that
true.
in the recording.
So, but my question, I mean, in 1611, you didn't write the Bible?
That would be an affirmative no.
James.
Nope, that wasn't me.
Okay.
Ah.
I was not King Jimmy.
But actually, that was a great way into number 14 about, as disciples of Rabbi Yeshua, what are we called to do? And we've already answered that. It's live transparently. Don't
True.
pretend to be something you're not.
Be open and honest.
Mhm.
Be an open book. Absolutely. Humility. That's something I've tried to express the last several years. Last few years anyway. Is we must be a humble Messianic Judaism, and we are humble by being real with who we are. We know our failures. We're not exalting ourselves and saying we're any better than the Catholic Church or Protestant Church or the Baptist Church down the road. We are just
Or
humble.
the normative synagogue.
Or
down
the
road.
right, yeah.
Different
We are just
synagogue.
humble servants of Yeshua who are following Him, who is a righteous King. The sharing the gospel. I heard this said one time. I thought it was wise. Sharing the gospel is teaching one poor man where he found bread. One more poor man teach another poor man where he found bread. I'm a poor man. I hope in spirit. I have a poor spirit, and that a humble spirit that's not haughty and prideful. But I know I don't have anything to be prideful of. So when we are honest with ourselves and we're faithful to follow Him, and to seek Him, I think we're in a much better place to lead people, to be true disciples of Yeshua, and to bring people to His feet. If I'm honest with who I am and I fail, you know what? It doesn't surprise them. They know who I am. It doesn't surprise them. Yeah, so what? You tripped up. He's human just like the rest of us, and that's okay. Because I can continue to follow him because I know he is following Yeshua. Even if he trips and falls along the way, I know he is following Yeshua. We are told to lead people to the feet of the master, right? This means, go ahead, you go ahead.
We need to be always ready to move, wanting to go with him, to make disciples. We need to learn how to recognize his voice,
Can I get through here?
to know where he wants us to go,
Absolutely.
and to serve and imitate him.
Absolutely. I have a couple other things to add here. Discipleship means relationship with one another. It means more than just sitting down at a table and teaching them their ABCs of the faith, but it means relationship, building relationships with one another. Those who are more mature in the faith in Yeshua are to mentor the younger, to help encourage and strengthen the younger. As followers of the Master, we are to be radical disciples, not just disciples, but radical disciples that follow him at all costs. That's why Yeshua tells us to count the cost before you follow me. Count the cost, because, for his 12, which would become 11 and the 12 again, but for his disciples, the inner circle, they would, almost all of them would die a tragic, martyr's death. That they knew what they were getting into at the beginning. I don't think they fully comprehended it, but that's why Yeshua was teaching them. You need to count the cost before you make this journey, because it's not an easy journey, and becoming a follower, becoming a believer in Yeshua does not by default suddenly make you a disciple. Okay, becoming a disciple in Yeshua is an active choice that you make day by day. You wake up in the morning and you say, I am going to follow him. It is a choice that you have to make day by day. And you have to continue to make. And we are going to come in areas in our lives where we're going to fall short. We're going to get up in the morning and say, you know what, I don't feel like doing it today. I'm just tired. I just want to lie in bed and watch TV.
That's why it's important that we go back to the beginning of this lesson where we talked about apprenticeship. I brought up internship. We talked about mentoring. All those things are so important in this.
Right.
But we need to understand that as a disciple, being a mentorship program, apprenticeship program, internship program, who our real master is and who we need to look up to and follow.
Absolutely. Yep, I couldn't put it any better. And I think it's important to realize that when other rabbis gathered disciples, they gathered the most learned men, the most learned students, the most learned young men. Okay, the most promising students. They would gather together and they would have them be their disciples and follow them around. There were some disciples who came to Yeshua and they asked, again, this is my paraphrase. This has to do with the wineskins, the parable of the wineskins. But essentially, they were coming. They were asking him, "Why are you gathering the disciples you're gathering? There's young, promising men out here, young men who could be your disciple, and yet you're bringing your fishermen, these ignorant fishermen. You're bringing tax collectors, zealots." You're bringing all of these people in here. These ordinary people have nothing special about them. They're just ordinary, run-of-the-mill folks. You're bringing them in to be your disciples. Why aren't you bringing in these educated folks? And yet it was these ordinary, so-called unlearned men who transformed the world because they were obedient. They followed him. These ordinary men and women transformed the world. So you may say, well, I'm not a great Torah scholar. I'm not this young up-and-coming student. I don't have this ability or that ability. Baloney. That doesn't let you off the hook.
If you went over to Charis Bible College, and sat in on a class, at Charis Bible College, I have done that on occasion or two, and I was the youngest guy in the room.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
So I mean, you can't say, that.
You're too young, or you're too old,
Right.
or your IQ isn't high enough, or
No.
your education level isn't high
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there are younger students there,
Sure.
but I mean, I would say that the mix of 30 and below and 60 and above is about the same as far as numbers.
Sure. Sure. It's never too late to start learning. Never too late to start learning, and it's incumbent upon us all. You could be a disciple of Yeshua at any point in your life that you choose to follow, and you will go on to extraordinary things. He will do extraordinary things through you if you're just faithfully following him, one foot in front of the other. They were, like I said, the first disciples of Yeshua were ordinary people who transformed the world. Our world today is filled with superficiality, filled with corruption and drunkenness and all manner of sin. We are called to transform this world. This world is in need of transforming today. Judaism refers to this as tikkun olam, repairing the world. And it's my vision of tikkun olam, or the scriptural vision of tikkun olam, is radically different than social reform Judaism, which is social activism. True tikkun olam begins here individually, in the heart, in the person, and it extends outward. It begins with not looking at outside world that needs to be transformed, but looking internally and say, I need to be transformed in his image. I need to follow him to be his disciple so that he can transform me from the inside out, and then he will send me out to repair the world, to bring forth his kingdom in a world that is in desperate need of the message of God.
It'd be interesting to find out when a rabbi, when he slipped up, how he handled the situation with his disciples.
There's a number of cases you can look up in the Talmud.
Okay.
Just do some cursory reading, you're sure to find some. It's you can find those. I mean,
Because
it wasn't uncommon.
they got to be there, exactly. It was not uncommon, exactly.
Right.
Because they put their they had this, okay.
Yes.
Or I will.
This interesting story. This is one place to start. One of the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, after the destruction of the temple, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a good, solid relationship with the Messianic community. In fact, it seems that he leaned upon some of the early Messianic believers for, okay, what do we do now that the temple is destroyed? We don't have a home to worship. And they began to formulate what would eventually become rabbinical Judaism. And it seems like, historically, that since the Messianic community, not too long before that, was excommunicated from the temple, that Yochanan ben Zakkai was at least working with some Messianic leaders, like the cousin of Yeshua and the cousin of James, who became the head of the Messianic community. One of Yochanan ben Zakkai's students had a few things to say about his teacher, that didn't go unnoticed by some of the other leaders of the Sanhedrin at the time. So, I mean, an interesting story. Read up on it. You should be able to find it fairly easy, but read up on it. I think you'd find it interesting.